By a weird coincidence, we have another Charles in Austin.
Hello.
Are you there?
Hello. Hello, hello.
Hi, you're on.
Hello.
Awesome. My question is more to the line of what your show's about, the atheist experience, and that's kind of what I'm interested in. I'm a Christian, but I personally, it bothers me when I hear other so-called Christians call your show. I think a lot of times they're really duping themselves into thinking that they're going to somehow convert you over the telephone, and I think it's ridiculous. I think that a lot of times the individuals end up making fools out of themselves, because the old argument, and like I heard when you were talking with the other Charles from Austin, you were mentioning that, he was saying something about C.S. Lewis and seeing the sun rise up in the sky. Mm-hmm. You made a very cogent point as to, well, I can look at the sun and there it is. I see it with my eyes.
Yes,
as
but
opposed
not for
to
very long, I'll
God,
myself.
Who kind of denies me that, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
My question is this, and it speaks completely toward the atheist experience. I'm curious as to what atheists believe in as maybe as a generality, if there is any generality, or if the atheist experience as far as belief goes is too random to generalize. But I'm curious, does an atheist or an atheist in general see anything do they view anything as larger than them, something that they can look up to, maybe themselves as an evolved being sometime down the line in the future? Or do they look toward, say, another individual, a poet, or I'm curious, is there any general reality, like, I don't know, like a lot of Hindus believe in this kind of amorphous essence that we join up with after we die? And I'm curious about that from the atheist point of view.
Okay.
Do you folks view anything as larger than yourselves, something that you look to for strength, for inspiration, or do you simply view yourselves in an evolved form as your ultimate?
Yeah, we get it.
I mean, that's difficult to answer in a number of ways. I mean, I could go with a literal answer like, well, an elephant's bigger than me, or Arnold Schwarzenegger is bigger than me.
Well, I'm really thinking greater in a celestial type of fashion.
Right. Well, I mean, you asked, like, if I look up to any particular person,
Sure.
and I mean, personally, I have a number of heroes. I mean, people whose opinions I respect, but I mean, they're my heroes not as a result of the idea that they are intrinsically better than me, but simply because I've listened to them or seen what they've done, and they make sense and have done something admirable. It's particularly hard to answer this for all atheists, because not only do we not speak for all atheists, but we can't speak for all atheists, because atheism as such isn't really a point of view. It's more of a rejection of one particular claim, which is lots of people believe in a God, we don't. That's pretty much all there is to being an atheist. Now, there are a lot of atheists who believe in other things besides gods, and there are a lot of people who believe dramatically different things from what we would believe. I would say that on this show we try to present a fairly consistent point of view, which is basically that science is a legitimate way of investigating the world, that it's good and reasonable to be skeptical of unusual claims until evidence is provided. And so, in that sense, I wouldn't say that there's a particular thing that we all look up to, although we all have individual heroes. I don't worship myself. In fact, I'm not even sure that I particularly agree with the idea that anything should be worshipped. I think things that are admirable should be admired, and I think that there shouldn't be any kind of blind, unconditional trust in anything because you should be open to changing your mind at any point.
Yeah.
I see.
I would say the difference between the, perhaps the atheist and the theist outlook on this would be that atheists reject the idea of sacred cows. You know what I mean? We really do think that everything ought to be questioned, and whereas we might have individuals or ideas or certain things that we admire and respect and consider to be rather authoritative and helpful, we do not consider those to be inviolable in any way. Now, in terms of thinking, do I think of anything larger than myself? Well, naturally, I do. And one of those things would be the great human race that I'm part of, right? This community of billions of other people. And we have to...
I was looking for a quote from Bertrand Russell that I really liked. It's from an essay called Freedom in the Colleges, and I think it kind of sums it up, where he says, the fundamental difference between the liberal and illiberal outlook is that the former regards all questions as open to discussion and all opinions as open to a greater or lesser measure of doubt, while the latter holds in advance that certain opinions are absolutely unquestionable and that no argument against them must be allowed to be heard. So we're in the first camp, basically.
I see. So you're saying, as atheists, you keep open minds.
Sure.
You could say that.
Well, atheism being, I guess, a subcategory of skepticism in general. Yes, as skeptics.
Or intersection group.
Yeah, something like that.
I would say that I am both an atheist and a skeptic, and you are too.
Right. So
that's extremely curious. I once had a priest tell me that it's easier to convert a non-believer than it is to rightly point out what's right and what's wrong to a wrong believer. That the wrong believers they plant themselves so deeply in their belief systems that you almost can't talk to them.
I mean, there are all kinds of points of view that are not Christianity, that are probably, diametrically opposed to Christianity, that we also don't agree with. I mean, there are people who are... take Muslims, for example. We, in the same way that we think Christians deserve respect as human beings, we would also extend that respect to Muslims. But Muslims, have very different ideas about God than Christians, and we don't agree with either of them.
Right.
And I imagine that it might be harder to convince a Muslim, although I think that someone who is sort of rigorous about demanding evidence usually comes away not finding any. Right. So it depends on the person.
And I think you pointed out also a reason why an evidence-based sort of rational outlook on the world is probably, in our opinions anyway, probably better than one that relies upon beliefs and faith, because the people whom you are, for example, referring to as wrong believers, they think you're the wrong believer. And they think, and they would say the same thing about, boy, I tried to talk to that guy and talk to him, and he just wouldn't change his mind, right? And so this is why I think perhaps, knowledge is, or at least being willing to admit that, in the absence of knowledge, not filling in gaps in knowledge with beliefs and faith is probably, in the end, intellectually a more defensible way to go about your business than saying, well, I just believe this because it makes me feel good. And you don't seem to be fundamentalist in your beliefs, but it takes, when you get to the fundamentalists who take that sort of rigid, inflexible attitude about their beliefs, like you were talking about, then that gets really, I think, problematic.
That kind of goes to a larger issue within Christianity, fundamentalism as opposed to orthodoxy. I'm Greek Orthodox.
Okay.
I have a very open mind, and I'm willing to talk nicely and listen to other people's points of view and then back off.
Well, you have been very nice.
I personally don't think anything is served by a forceful approach, especially when you're dealing with something that claims tolerance and compassion first and foremost.
Right.
So I definitely, I have a lot of disagreements with a lot of, I guess, American Christianity
Right.
as a whole.